Hi, welcome back for week 2. I hope you had a blast in week 1 and had fun making your sensory bottles. Now we're into week 2 and you'll find this video a little bit shorter and probably easier to digest. We're going to run through the objectives that are coming up, and we're going to again talk more in depth about the language and the cognitive objectives, and then quickly run through what you'll be covering in the activities for the other subjects. So first I wanted to start with the language objective, which is to use transition words. Now, again, with little kids, this is why we have these language objectives up front for the parent to do, because it's so much about modeling for your child. It's not about an activity that you assign to your child of like, here's a list of transition words. You need to use these in a sentence. They're way too young for that type of activity, obviously. And the way to incorporate this into their learning environment is for you to use them. So first, we just need to talk a little bit about what transition words are. They are grouped by categories, and some of them are very familiar to us, like and, but, and or, and then some of them are way less familiar. Let's run through the different categories of transition words really quickly so that you can see the wide variety of words that fall into this category. Some of them are cause and effect words, and these words include things like consequently, therefore, accordingly, as a result, because, for this reason, hence, and thus. Now, obviously, we don't use a lot of these words in everyday conversation, but that doesn't mean that it's not good to work in a couple here and there. Children love big words and they can absorb them. Think of all the different names of dinosaurs that little children learn and how massive those words are. So don't be afraid to work in a big fancy word now and again. You can even make it fun and work them into, for instance, do it in an exaggerated accent. I know you would like to play more. Nevertheless, it is time to get ready for bed. So you can make it fun and incorporate some of these lesser known transition words into your child's vocabulary that way. So after cause and effect, we have sequence words, words like furthermore, in addition, moreover, first, second, third, and so forth. You have comparison and contrast words like similarly, also, in the same way, on the contrary, still, yet, at the same time. You also have example words like for example, for instance, in fact, indeed, of course, specifically. You have purpose words like for this reason, to this end, with this object. And time and location words like nearby, above, these are also prepositions. Adjacent to, below, beyond, here, there. So again, some of these are very familiar words we use in everyday conversation. Other ones are ones that are not so common. Work in a bunch of these and model these for your child, and just to make sure they have a wide breadth of vocabulary that they're hearing every day. Point them out when you're reading books. And then on the subject of pointing them out, when you catch your child using one of these words, you want to praise them and make sure that you notice their complex sentence structure that they're using here. This is one of the signs that your child is developing a little bit more of a complex sentence structure, is when they use transition words to link phrases or different sentences together. So when you see your child using one of these words, you want to say, wow, you said, you know, insert the word that they used. That's such a great word choice. You really speak well. You really have such a huge vocabulary, and praise them for that language skill and really notice that. And it'll make your child feel great about themselves and give them confidence in their vocabulary and in using big words and in using complex sentence structure, which is part of the reason why we run down these lists of words, is not only so that you can model some of them for your child, but that you're familiar with what these words are in order to notice them when your child happens to use them. Or you can even notice them, like if you hear one on TV and point that out. Wow, that's a really interesting word. Don't be afraid to call out language when you see it, and notice it in front of your child, and it will build an appreciation in them for complex words and big words, and then it'll go back to that objective from last week of asking why questions, and they'll begin to ask you more what different words mean, and it's a wonderful way to develop a very healthy and robust vocabulary in your child, just to begin to notice language. We're going to move on to talk about our cognitive objective now, which also falls into the same category of cognitive objectives as last week, which is analyzation. And this week focuses on making comparisons. And this, just like last week, also relates to the language objective, because we often use transition words when we make comparisons. That's one of those whole categories of words, is comparison words. So it is related to the language objective. One of the things that you can do with your child that's really fun to focus on helping them make comparisons is a compare and contrast game. You can pick two objects like two toys. One that I love to do is a toy truck or car along with a stuffed animal, and put them on the table and have a game of thinking of all of the ways that they're similar and then all of the ways that they're different. And you're going to want to help your child and participate along with them to give them ideas for this. So some very obvious comparisons might be that they could be the same size or very different sizes, or there could be similar colors on them or very different colors on them. But then you want to prompt your child and help them to notice more abstract concepts as well. For instance, they're both toys, so you use both of them to play. But one of them you might, the toy car or truck you might play with on the floor in the sandbox, whereas the stuffed animal is for cuddling at nap time, and how that is a difference between them, even though they're both toys. So help them to ponder some of those more abstract ways that they're similar and different as well. And an extension activity of this is that you might want to take out a piece of paper and a pencil or a clipboard and make a column of similarities and differences. And as you and your child think of ways that they're similar and ways that they're different, you write them down. This does a couple of things. It models for your child a use for writing and how important writing can be. But it also sometimes really motivates them to find more similarities and more differences, because they like to see those columns add up with different things that they think of. And then they can refer back to it and have you read back what they've discovered about each item. After you're done with the two toys that you pick, then you can let your child, another way to keep them engaged in this is let them pick two different objects, and then repeat the process with objects of your child's choice. So this is an activity that you can do in a wide variety of places. You can do it outside, you can do it at the park. You can pick any two things and have a compare and contrast game that works on comparison skills, and then also at the same time incorporates a lot of that comparison language that happens to be transition words as well. So moving on from the language and the cognitive objectives, you're going to have activity choices today in the other subject areas. The first one being literacy. We worked on the letter A last week, and so this week it's the letter B, and it's a consonant. So that's always, the consonants are always a little bit easier than the vowel sounds. And the letter B makes one sound. So the good news is that anytime you see that, except for the very, very rare words, like for instance, the word lamb comes to mind, where the B is silent, you're going to find that the letter B sound makes the same sound in any word, no matter where you find it, and that is super helpful. So you're going to work on identifying the upper and lowercase b's, and also on the sound B, or ba. In math, you're going to continue the objectives from week 1. Again, we talked about how these foundational concepts of counting objects and number recognition are so incredibly important to later skills, mathematical operations like adding and subtracting. So we spend a fair amount of time on it. Again, as I said in week 1, if your child has mastered this and is getting bored with this, feel free to count to higher numbers. Feel free to do number recognition with numbers above 10, but only if your child has really, really mastered counting objects 1 through 20 and number recognition 1 through 10. That's where we want the focus to be until they have truly mastered those skills. For the fine motor skills, we are actually incorporating a new objective, which is finger isolation. So we're working on a few of the activities that we were doing in week 1, which is hand-eye coordination, a precision activity, an in-hand manipulation activity. We saw all of those in week 1, but this week we have a different one, finger isolation activity, which is working on activities where they are isolating just using one finger at a time. For social emotional objectives, we're working with a social awareness objective of beginning to recognize that different people may have different emotional reactions. So we give you some activity ideas for that. And also relationship skills, which is not just important within your home and when you take your child to the park and playing with friends, but also obviously in a kindergarten setting if you're going to send your child to a traditional preschool or to a traditional kindergarten environment. That's going to be extremely important there, is to work on those relationship skills. So the objective for this week is engages in meaningful conversation, and we give you some activity suggestions for that as well. And finally, for Friday, the fun project is such a great one. It's a pine cone bird feeder, and I love to say that this activity is the gift that keeps on giving, because it can be extended in so many ways and offer so many learning opportunities long after the day that you actually make the pine cone bird feeder, because then hopefully what you get is a bunch of birds coming to your feeder. And it is such a wonderful activity to open the door to nature studies. If you haven't been doing nature studies yet with your preschooler, this is a wonderful way to start that. You can look up what seed-eating birds you have in your area and learn a little bit about them, learn to identify them and some facts about them. Do they migrate? Do they stay here all year long? Do they have any natural predators in your area? Where do they make their nests? What else do they eat besides seeds? What do their eggs look like? There's so many things you can learn about these birds that will hopefully be coming to your feeder. And then just go off on tangents of learning all sorts of things about that. It's a wonderful way if your child wants to begin keeping a nature journal, where you could print out pictures of the birds that come to the feeder and help them put them in a journal, and maybe write a couple facts about them, and maybe track which days birds come to your feeder and things of that nature. So the project will be actually making the feeder, and then after that you can just take it as far as you want to take it with nature studies. It's a wonderful, wonderful gateway activity to nature studies with your preschooler. So I hope you have fun this week, and I will see you back again for week 3.